You ever wonder why we spend so much time building walls around our faith instead of bridges between them? Why it feels like religion, something meant to heal, has been turned into a weapon of division? We scroll through headlines, we hear the noise, and somewhere along the way, we're made to believe that different means dangerous. But what if I told you the truth is quieter and deeper? What if I told you that Islam, a faith often misunderstood, doesn't preach against Christians, but speaks about them with honor, with respect, with love? Let's clear away the noise and listen to the truth. The real truth. Here are 6 truths Islam speaks about Christians, truths that don't divide but connect, truths that don't harden the heart but open it. There is something deeply powerful in the phrase "people of the book." It's a phrase that carries weight beyond simple words. It carries history, respect, and connection. When Islam calls Christians the people of the book, it's not a casual label or an afterthought. It's an acknowledgement that there is a shared foundation, a sacred lineage that ties believers together through scripture, prophets, and divine messages. This phrase opens a door that many don't realize exists, a door leading to understanding instead of division. In a world so quick to focus on differences, to amplify what separates us, this recognition is radical. It's a reminder that Christians are not outsiders or adversaries in the story of faith. Instead, they are part of a broader narrative that honors revelation from God. Both faiths carry texts believed to be divinely inspired, guiding millions on how to live with compassion, justice, and hope. This connection creates a spiritual kinship that Islam insists must be honored. It's a powerful call to remember that faith is not a zero, some game but a tapestry woven with many threads, each valuable and meaningful. This title, People of the Book, comes with a responsibility. It calls for respect and careful treatment. In the Quran, Muslims are instructed to speak kindly and justly to those who do not share their beliefs. This is not an abstract ideal. It's a practical command to approach others with dignity, even when there are disagreements. By recognizing Christians as people of the book, Islam elevates the relationship from one of suspicion or rivalry to one of mutual recognition and potential friendship. It challenges the narrative that faiths must clash, instead suggesting that respect and understanding are the starting points. Think about how transformative this is. In times when religion often becomes a reason to fight, this phrase offers an alternative. A way to see those who believe differently not as enemies, but as companions on a shared journey toward meaning and truth. It doesn't erase differences or demand agreement. Instead, it invites believers to look beyond surface distinctions and find common ground. It asks for hearts that can hold both conviction in their own beliefs and respect for the beliefs of others. This perspective shaped history in profound ways. For centuries, Muslim societies lived alongside Christian communities, acknowledging their right to worship and protecting their religious freedoms. The acknowledgement that Christians were people of the book wasn't just theological. It shaped laws, policies, and everyday interactions. It created spaces where dialogue could happen and coexistence could flourish. It was a recognition that spiritual diversity wasn't a threat, but a reality to be navigated with wisdom and compassion. What if we held onto that today? What if we remembered that connection instead of focusing on the divides? The phrase "people of the book" is more than a title. It's a reminder that our stories overlap, that our faiths share roots, and that there is sacredness in that shared history. It calls us to lean into respect, to choose dialogue over dismissal, and to see the humanity in one another. When faith invites us to look with reverence at those who walk a different path, it invites us to live with greater love and understanding. Jesus, the name itself, carries a weight that echoes across centuries, across cultures, across faiths. In Islam, the reverence for Jesus is not just acknowledged, it's deeply felt, profoundly honored. Unlike many assumptions that paint religious lines in stark opposition, Islam's view of Jesus reveals a heart full of respect and love. Jesus isn't just a figure from history or a story from a book. He is a living symbol of purity, faith, and divine purpose. The Quran speaks of him with words that are poetic and powerful, describing his miraculous birth, his wisdom beyond years, and the miracles he performed, not as myths, but as truth. This reverence is not accidental or superficial. It is a foundational piece of Islamic belief that shapes how Muslims see their own faith and how they relate to Christianity. The belief in Jesus is so central that it's impossible to be considered a true follower of Islam without recognizing him as one of the greatest messengers of God. He is honored as Isa the Messiah, the one sent to guide humanity back to God's path. His message is seen as part of the same divine mission that Islam continues. This shared reverence for Jesus is a bridge that connects rather than divides. The story of Jesus in Islam is remarkable. Born miraculously to Mary, a woman of unmatched faith and virtue, Jesus is presented as a sign from God, a miracle in a world that often feels cold and broken. He spoke with wisdom as a child, healed the sick, brought the dead back to life, and performed signs that left people in awe. These miracles weren't mere tricks. They were demonstrations of divine power and mercy. And through all of it, Jesus remained humble, devoted, and committed to his mission. What's more, Islam rejects the idea of Jesus as divine, not to diminish him, but to clarify his role. He is a servant of God, a messenger, not God himself. This distinction is crucial because it shapes the Muslim understanding of monotheism, an unshakable belief in one God without partners. Yet, this difference in theology does not lessen the deep respect Muslims hold for Jesus. If anything, it heightens it. To honor someone so profoundly while understanding their true role requires a nuanced faith that values truth over convenience. This respect extends beyond belief to action. Muslims are taught to speak respectfully of Jesus and his mother Mary, whose story is also beautifully told in the Quran with tenderness and reverence. The names Isa and Maryam are uttered in prayers and reflections, reminding believers of the shared spiritual heritage with Christians. This isn't just theological acknowledgement, it's an emotional connection, a bond of love and admiration. In a world where faith often becomes a battlefield, the love Islam holds for Jesus is a quiet rebellion. It defies the idea that different beliefs must breed contempt. Instead, it offers a model for how reverence can cross boundaries, how respect can coexist with difference, and how faith can be a source of unity rather than division. The honor given to Jesus in Islam is a reminder that faith is not about tearing down others, but about lifting up what is true, good, and noble in every tradition. And when you hold that truth close, it changes everything. The way you see others, the way you speak about them, and the way you live your own faith with humility and grace. There is a verse that stands out like a beacon in the often turbulent sea of interfaith relations, a verse that says the closest in affection to the believers are those who say, "We are Christians." Imagine that for a moment. In a world that loves to pit faith against faith, where headlines scream about clashes and conflicts, here is a profound reminder that those who truly follow the message of Christ are among the warmest allies in spirit. This isn't just poetic language or a hopeful wish. It's a deep truth embedded in the very foundation of Islam. It flips the narrative from competition to companionship. What does it mean to be closest in affection? It means more than mere tolerance or coexistence. It means a heartfelt bond rooted in shared values and mutual respect. It means seeing beyond labels and titles to recognize the sincerity, the compassion, the commitment that lives in the hearts of true believers. It means recognizing that kindness, mercy, and devotion transcend religious boundaries, and that these qualities forge connections stronger than any theological difference. The relationship Islam envisions with Christians is not one of suspicion or enmity. It is a relationship of warmth and closeness. The Quran doesn't just tolerate Christians, it celebrates the possibility of genuine affection and friendship. This perspective challenges the way we often view the other. Instead of seeing Christians as rivals or opponents, Islam invites believers to see them as companions on a shared spiritual journey. It's a call to look for the good, to acknowledge the love and faith in others, even when their path differs from our own. This closeness is reflected in history as well. Across centuries, Muslim and Christian communities have lived side by side, shared ideas, and protected each other's right to worship. The recognition of Christians as affectionate allies is not just a theological ideal, it has been practiced in acts of kindness, protection, and cooperation. It's a reminder that faith communities can build bridges, not walls. This teaching also calls us to examine our own hearts. How often do we let suspicion or prejudice cloud our ability to see the good in others? How often do we forget that kindness is the language that all hearts understand? The idea that Christians can be closest in affection is a challenge to move beyond fear and judgment toward love and empathy. It reminds us that true faith does not breed hatred but fosters connection. When you hold this truth, it reshapes your perspective. It softens hardened attitudes and opens the door to dialogue. It invites you to embrace the humanity in those who believe differently, to celebrate the shared values that unite rather than divide. It's a reminder that the spirit of religion is not conflict but compassion, and this closeness is not just about feeling warm emotions, it's about action. It's about standing together in times of hardship, respecting each other's beliefs, and working side by side for justice and peace. It's a model for how faith communities can be allies, not adversaries, even when their doctrines differ. In a world hungry for connection and weary of division, this message is a beacon of hope. It tells us that love can cross religious lines, that respect can overcome fear, and that faith, at its core, is about building bridges that bring us closer together rather than walls that keep us apart. There is a truth often overlooked, a part of history and faith that doesn't make the headlines but speaks volumes about the heart of Islam, the protection and respect given to Christian communities throughout time. This wasn't accidental or temporary. It was a principle rooted in the very fabric of Islamic teaching and practice, a commitment to justice that extended beyond one's own circle. Imagine a world where power is often used to dominate, to silence, to erase difference. Yet here is a faith that called its followers not just to tolerate Christians, but to safeguard their rights, their places of worship, their very existence. This was not out of political convenience or fear, but out of conviction, a conviction that justice must be universal and dignity must be upheld for all. Muslim leaders, inspired by the teachings of their faith, took seriously the responsibility to protect those who believed differently. This wasn't a vague ideal, but a lived reality. Historical records show treaties and agreements that guaranteed Christians could worship freely, maintain their churches, and live with security in Muslim lands. These protections weren't symbolic. They were practical safeguards that ensured the survival and flourishing of diverse communities. It was a recognition that faith does not grant one the right to oppress another, but instead calls for fairness, mercy, and respect. This protection extended to the sacred places Christians held dear. Churches were not just buildings. They were homes for faith, community, and identity. The fact that Muslim rulers respected these places showed a deep regard for the spiritual lives of others. It was an acknowledgement that God's mercy is not confined to one faith alone, but embraces the sincere worship of all believers. This respect challenged the idea that different religions must always be in conflict, instead offering a vision of coexistence grounded in justice. What made this protection even more remarkable was that it came without demands for conversion or assimilation. Christians were free to live out their faith authentically, without fear of persecution or forced change. This kind of freedom is rare in history, and it speaks to the spirit of justice in Islam, a justice that is not selective or conditional but universal. It recognizes the humanity in every person, regardless of their creed, and insists on their right to live with dignity. This principle of justice is woven through Islamic teaching. The Quran commands fairness and kindness toward those who do not share the same belief, urging believers to engage with respect and integrity. It's a powerful reminder that justice is not just for those who agree with us, but for everyone. When power is wielded with justice, it becomes a shield for the vulnerable, not a sword against them. Thinking about this history and teaching invites us to reflect on our own views and actions. How do we treat those who are different? Do we protect their rights and dignity, or do we allow fear and misunderstanding to drive division? The example set by Islam's respect and protection for Christian communities challenges us to be better, to embody justice in our relationships and communities. This legacy also offers hope. In a world fractured by conflict and suspicion, the story of protection and respect shows that peaceful coexistence is possible. It reminds us that faith can be a force for justice and compassion, not division and oppression. It calls us to imagine a world where power is used to uplift, protect, and honor the sacredness in every human life. And when we hold on to that vision, when we live by that example, we become part of a legacy that transcends time and place. A legacy that says justice and respect are not just ideals, but actions that shape our world. There is a powerful, often misunderstood principle at the core of Islam that challenges many assumptions and stereotypes. The idea that there is no compulsion in religion. This is not a vague suggestion or a secondary rule. It's a clear and firm command that faith cannot be forced or imposed. It speaks to the essence of belief as something deeply personal, something that must come from the heart, not from pressure or fear. In a world where religion is often weaponized or wielded as a tool of control, this teaching shines like a beacon of freedom and respect. Imagine the courage it takes to declare that faith must be chosen freely, that belief is not a mandate handed down by power, but a journey walked willingly by the soul. This principle acknowledges the sacredness of individual conscience and honors the struggle each person faces in seeking truth. It refuses to reduce religion to mere outward conformity or social expectation. Instead, it demands sincerity, authenticity, and a personal commitment that can only be given when the heart is truly convinced. This teaching reshapes the way we think about religious interaction. It reminds us that genuine faith cannot be the product of coercion because true belief is about love, trust, and connection, not about fear or obligation. It also calls on believers to respect the choices of others, to recognize that every person has the right to seek their own path without threat or pressure. It's an invitation to empathy, to humility, and to patience in the face of differences. The verse that declares there is no compulsion in religion isn't just a statement, it's a revolution against the misuse of faith. It tells us that forced belief is hollow, that conversion under duress is meaningless. Real faith requires freedom, space, and respect. This is why throughout history, many Muslim societies upheld the rights of others to maintain their own beliefs and practices. This principle shaped policies that allowed religious minorities to worship freely, to live according to their conscience, and to coexist peacefully within diverse communities. What this means for today is profound. When people hear about Islam, they often fear that it demands absolute conformity or threatens those who don't share its beliefs. But this teaching shows the opposite. A respect for diversity that is built into the faith itself. It challenges us to rethink what it means to believe, to accept that spirituality cannot be forced, but must be invited, nurtured, and chosen freely. This also calls us to examine our own attitudes toward others. How often do we pressure people, intentionally or unintentionally, to believe or behave a certain way? How often do we confuse true faith with mere outward appearances? The teaching that there is no compulsion reminds us that faith is about transformation, not transaction, about relationship, not rules. It also offers hope for peaceful coexistence. If faith must be chosen freely, then coercion and conflict have no place in the realm of genuine spirituality. This principle calls us to build communities where respect and freedom are paramount, where dialogue replaces dogma, and where the bonds of humanity are stronger than the walls of division. And when we live by this truth, when we honor freedom of belief as sacred, we create a world where faith becomes a source of healing and connection rather than fear and fracture. There is a profound message woven throughout the teachings of Islam about the power of dialogue and peaceful coexistence with Christians, one that is often overshadowed by misunderstanding and conflict in the world today. This message calls for hearts and minds to come together, not to battle, but to bridge gaps. It encourages believers to engage with one another through conversation, respect, and a genuine desire to understand, rather than dismiss or dehumanize. In a time when division seems to dominate headlines, this call to dialogue shines like a light, offering a path toward healing and unity. The Quran and the teachings of Islam emphasize the importance of speaking kindly and justly to those who hold different beliefs. It is not merely about tolerance, but about active, sincere engagement, listening deeply and responding with respect. This approach recognizes the humanity in every person, regardless of faith, and values the rich diversity of beliefs as a gift rather than a threat. It's a radical shift from the idea that differences must lead to conflict. Instead, it places dialogue at the heart of how communities can live side by side in peace. This principle is not theoretical or distant. It has been practiced throughout history. Muslim and Christian communities have often shared spaces, cultures, and ideas, learning from one another and supporting each other's rights to worship freely. The emphasis on dialogue helped create societies where coexistence was not just possible but flourishing. It's a legacy that challenges us today to prioritize understanding over suspicion and relationship over rivalry. When Islam encourages peaceful coexistence, it also calls believers to reject hatred, prejudice, and violence. It insists that faith should be a force for peace, not destruction. This is a powerful reminder in a world where religion is too often linked with conflict. It demands that we hold ourselves accountable, that we examine how we treat those who differ from us, and that we choose compassion and fairness above all. This message also offers a framework for interfaith cooperation, working together on shared goals like justice, charity, and peace building. It reminds us that despite theological differences, believers of all faiths have common values and aspirations. The ability to collaborate across religious lines is not just desirable, it is essential for addressing the world's greatest challenges. Islam's call for dialogue invites believers to move beyond fear and suspicion to partnership and mutual support. Moreover, peaceful coexistence and dialogue open the door to greater self-reflection. Engaging with others who believe differently challenges us to deepen our own understanding and to grow spiritually. It pushes us to listen carefully, to recognize the complexities in our own faith, and to approach others with humility. This process is not about weakening conviction, but about strengthening it through respect and learning. In a world fractured by division, the call for dialogue and peaceful coexistence reminds us of our shared humanity. It invites us to imagine a future where faith is a source of connection rather than conflict, where conversations replace confrontations, and where peace is cultivated through understanding. When we embrace this truth, when we live it boldly and sincerely, we become agents of change. builders of bridges in a world desperate for healing, ambassadors of peace in times that so desperately need it. We spend so much time defending our faith that we forget faith is not about being right. It's about being righteous. It's about leading with love. And when you really dive into what Islam says about Christians, you don't find a battle. You find a bridge, one built on mutual respect, one guided by shared purpose. One that reminds us that before religion became a badge, it was a bond that still has the power to heal, to connect, and to remind us all we're not as different as we think.